Did you know that in communist China, Winnie the Pooh has actually been outlawed? Why would they outlaw something as sweet and innocent as Winnie the Pooh? Well, it started after people were sharing around internet memes in China showing President Xi Jinping in a similar mold as Winnie the Pooh and comparing him unfavorably to the dear leader of China. Geez, what a tyrannical and backward country that is. What kind of a nation would actually imprison somebody over something as harmless as posting cartoons on the internet? Oh boy, am I thankful to be a citizen of the United States of America. Well, I hate to tell you all this, but that's a load of crap. Because apparently, even in the good old United States of America, land of the free, it is quite possible now that we might be sent to prison for posting cartoons on the internet. Unless COPPA is changed. What is COPPA? Well, COPPA was a legislation passed in the mid-1990s for the purposes of preventing social media companies and other shady online dealers from collecting information on children. Children being anyone under the age of 13. So this was yet another piece of misguided legislation passed in the interest of protecting the kids.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Well, anyone right now with even one lick of common sense might argue that it's up to the parents of those kids to make sure that children are not getting into anything shady on the internet, but sadly common sense is not common. When South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut premiered in 1999, believe it or not, there were actually some parents who took their children to it and then later had an angry reaction complaining about the movie's content, claiming that the movie was inappropriate for their children. That's despite the fact that the movie was rated R and very clearly was never marketed towards children. But in their incredibly tiny brains, simply the fact that it was animated meant it must have been targeting their kids.
I'm sorry. Actually, what I said was... How would you like to suck my balls, Mr. Garcia?
Sadly, today, a good number of the children of those parents now have children of their own, contributing to our accelerating decline towards idiocracy.
Carl's Jr., fuck you. I'm eating.
Now, you might be saying that such stupid people gotta be a very small percentage of the population. There's no way that that kind of mindset would ever have any major influence on society. Yeah, I wish that were true, but sadly, you are very, very, very wrong on that. People with an incredibly dubious and ill-informed definition of what does and doesn't constitute children's entertainment have actually quite enormous power in our society, as the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, have a very similar definition of what is and is not targeting children as such misinformed parents did back in 1999. And with the enormous power given to the federal government, the FTC plans on enforcing standards just like those on all of YouTube. And if you're an independent content creator, you really should pay attention to this because the conclusions and the penalties involved are incredibly frightening. This whole mess started earlier this year when various child advocacy groups encouraged the FTC to sue YouTube, claiming they were in violation of the Child Online Privacy Protection Act and claiming that Google was indeed knowingly collecting the private information of children, those under 13, in clear violation of the law. Google eventually decided to settle this lawsuit, paying a fine to the FTC of $170 million and agreeing to institute various changes on all of YouTube. These changes include requiring that content creators label their videos whether they're intended for children or not. That may sound very simple. Most content creators, of course, do not make videos for children, and thus simply labeling that this video is not intended for kids theoretically should be enough. The real problem is they have incredibly vague guidelines on what they think should or should not constitute children's content.
Made for kids content. Per the FTC's guidance under COPPA, when deciding whether or not your channel or video is made for kids, you should think about factors like the subject matter of your video, whether children are your intended audience for the video.
My videos are not for children. Not a single video I have ever uploaded or will ever upload are intended for children. I have never in my life ever recommended children watch my content. I use frequent profanities. I make various adult humor. My videos should not be watched by children. If you are under the age of 13, click away from any one of my videos. They are not for you. But how do I prove that? All they really have is my word, and if they say I'm lying, I have really no way of proving that I'm not. That's entirely subjective.
Whether the video includes child actors or models. Whether the video includes characters, celebrities, or toys that appeal to children, including animated characters or cartoon figures. Whether the language of the video is intended for children to understand.
Yeah, it could even include language of the website, such as language that is simple enough to be understandable to children 12 and under. Short, colorful descriptions, slang, and pop cultural phrases, e.g. a kid's site may be identified by such language as kids only, fun, free stuff, whatever, cool, duh, games, and ask your parents.
Whether the video includes activities that appeal to children, such as play acting, simple songs or games, or early education. Whether the video includes songs, stories, or poems that appeal to children, and any other information you may have to help determine your video's audience.
Whether the website uses visual content appealing to children, animated characters, bold or fast-moving graphics, or bright and vibrant colors. Yeah, it is really hard to think of any kind of entertaining content anyone could make that wouldn't violate these vague rules in some way, shape, or form. Let's say you want to do a channel talking about video games, doing Let's Plays. Well, kids like video games, so you can't do that. That's targeting kids. Let's say you want to make a science channel and talk about Earth's ancient past. Well, you can't do that because kids like dinosaurs. That's targeting kids. Let's say you want to talk about astronomy. Well, a lot of kids dream of being astronauts. That's violating the rules. You're targeting kids. Let's say you're a sports fanatic and you want to talk about the latest sports games. Well, kids like playing sports. You're targeting kids. Other than maybe talking about economics on a blackboard with no music or anything remotely entertaining whatsoever, I don't know anything I could make that wouldn't violate these vague rules in some way. This essentially destroys all entertaining content on this platform, or maybe any platform.
Ultimately, we can't provide legal advice, so we're unable to confirm whether or not your content is made for kids. That decision is up to you, taking into consideration these factors. But we want to help you follow the law as much as we can. Check out our help center and talk to a lawyer if you're still unsure whether or not your content should be marked as made for kids.
Sure, because everyone who wants to upload a cute video of their kitten playing with a ball of string really is able to contact a lawyer prior to uploading it. But now you might be saying, well, even if this will kill your channel, well, you can do something else with your life. There's nothing really that dangerous. All they can really do is kill your channel, right? No. And this is the scariest part. And that's why this is a lot scarier than anything dumb YouTube has done. You can't really blame YouTube for this. YouTube is just complying with a disorganized and unjust law. This is ultimately government action, and the government can do a lot worse to you.
Hi, Stephen from CBS News. Is it safe to say if YouTube is informing channel creators that they need to be COPPA compliant, they go through the training, moving forward, content creators are more at risk than the actual platform at being fined?
Content creators are always at risk of being fined because they're and channel owners, because there we have a situation where we have a website or an online service that is directed to children. So there, in the general audience platform, we still have this knowledge requirement that we have to prove up. So there is, I think, in theory as well as practically speaking, generally a higher risk for channel owners and content creators who, after all, are creating this content.
That's right. If you mark your content as not intended for children, and let me repeat again, none of my videos have ever been intended for children. If some unelected bureaucrat at the FTC disagrees with you, they can actually pursue criminal fines against me and against millions of other content creators on this platform. If you live outside the United States, you likely won't have to deal with any kind of criminal penalties. But I ain't that lucky. But you might be saying, well, it must be just a small fine, just like a speeding ticket. Try $42,000. I don't have $42,000 under my mattress. If I were to be fined such a thing, I would lose my home or I would go to prison. Think about that. I could go to prison. Thousands, if not millions, of other content creators could potentially go to prison for reviewing movies or video games or talking about sports on the internet. That is the kind of hellhole future we are headed for in just a few weeks if this isn't stopped. And you might now be thinking, that's just paranoid. There's no way the government would give such a massive fine towards someone whose video may have made only a few bucks. That is clearly just paranoid fear-mongering. Well, if you think that's the case, you should probably look into abuses the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, have done to many different middle-class and poor property owners under the Clean Water Act of 1972. The Clean Water Act of 1972 was created to protect wetlands. Because how would we get massive swarms of mosquitoes without them? This legislation was intended, and most of its proponents would argue, only to prevent pollution into our waterways by big companies. The problem is, it gives the Environmental Protection Agency incredibly broad and sweeping powers in order to enforce it. And it very unclearly defines what a wetland is. It simply gives these bureaucrats arbitrary discretion to simply declare anyone's home or property a wetland if they see fit. And if they declare it a wetland, bad things can happen to you.
I cannot even imagine how much money they spent prosecuting my husband.
The feds tried Jill Barron's husband, Jack, and lost. But instead of apologizing for getting it wrong, they now threaten to fine him $37,000 a day. What terrible crime did the government say Jack and Jill committed? Trying to build a house on their own property.
The county gave you permission to build a house.
Yes, they did. And they inspected the foundation and approved it.
So you started to build.
Mm-hmm.
But a government-owned drainage ditch nearby was clogged with logs, so Jack asked the government to fix it.
They told my husband, we are backed up 6 months. If you can clean the ditch, go ahead and do it. So he used his backhoe. He removed huge logs out of this ditch. The water poured off the land, and we were cited one felony for cleaning the ditch.
What?
A felony charge. It gave the property the appearance of being a wetlands. The state government floods your property, and then the federal government comes and charges you with felonies for building on a wetland.
And it clearly isn't a wetland. Jack is digging a well here. He had to go deep down. He wasn't finding water.
He was down about 8 feet, could not find a water table.
I should repeat, a jury cleared Jack of all charges.
And we won. But after we were home for a month maybe, the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA sent us another letter saying how nice for you that you won in the criminal court, but we still feel it's a wetlands, and the decision made by the jury did not matter to them. And if you don't get off the property, we're going to fine you civil.
What does that mean?
$37,500 a day.
They've had to sell their home. Now they live in a modified trailer.
So this has already almost taken everything you have.
Well, yeah, or I wouldn't live like that.
And their life savings?
We'll be bankrupt, obviously. You have no idea what you're up against. You don't know the power that is the EPA.
Do anything to try to bring attention to this abuse against property owners by the EPA? And, of course, far-left dipshit websites like Think Progress will label you a steadfast enemy to the air he breathes. concerning when Senator Rand Paul tried to bring attention to abuse like this. This is the inevitable result of what happens when you give a group of unelected bureaucrats unlimited power to police very, very vague laws and give very steep penalties to people as they see fit. Abuse is inevitable, and the vague wording of COPPA will inevitably be abused. Let's say you post a picture of a new puppy you got on social media, for example. Well, children love puppies, and you posted it online, you're targeting children. $42,000. The upcoming enforcement of these rules on content creators is clearly not what this law was originally passed in order to prevent. This law was passed in order to prevent people from gathering information about children. Somebody uploading videos of Let's Plays or making their own cartoons on this platform is not gathering any information of children. Even if children do watch his stuff, he cannot control who watches it. And of course, he can't prove his intent of who he intends it for without others being able to read his mind. So this is clearly abusing this law, as it is enforcing it in a way that was never intended to be enforced. But on top of that, and even more importantly, this is absolutely a violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution. How on earth does this not limit freedom of expression? When you impose draconian fines on people over basic freedom of expression, over these incredibly vague rules, you absolutely are chilling free speech. And having such a massive penalty over something so minor absolutely violates the Eighth Amendment's provision against cruel and unusual punishments. This law, these rules that are coming soon, are absolutely tyrannical. And that's why it is very important that the internet unite against this kind of implementation. I will be leaving a link below in the description of where you can leave a comment to the FTA saying how you feel about this implementation. Also, there is a Change.org petition, which I really hope soon gets to 1 million signatures. But another thing you can do is to contact your congressman. Keep in mind, the FTA's power is given to them by Congress. And if Congress decides that they're abusing their power, the FTA would have to back down. And the real question for me, and I'm asking all of you, what should I do right now? I honestly don't know. The thing about this channel is it's pretty much just a hobby of mine. It's not something I earn a living off of. It's not really something I really need in order to survive. It's something I do for fun. I really enjoy doing it. I enjoy reading comments. I enjoy making videos. I enjoy talking about topics. It's fun. But is it worth a $42,000 fine? No, not really. But I really shouldn't have to choose between having a hobby and risking a crazy draconian fine. And you might say, well, it's very unlikely they'd come after you. It's very unlikely, even if they did, the penalty would be so high. And that's probably true. But why take the chance is really the question. And what kind of free country are we living in where that's even a remote possibility? Always remember, your liberty is only one generation away from extinction. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And now is the time to stand up for your rights. Now is the time to make your voice known. Tell the FTC you do not like the way COPPA is being implemented right now. Stand for the right of independent content creators and stand for free speech on the internet. I'm some loudmouth on the internet, and you just heard my opinion.